Hey, how's everybody doing today? This is Mark Brody, and this is our newest episode of Coffee Talk with Brohawk. And today I'm very honored to have Jeremy Hyde join us today. Jeremy, how are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having me on for some coffee talk. Really good to see you as always, my friend.
I love having conversations with you. They're always energizing, and I always learn something from you. Jeremy, could you tell our viewers a little bit something about you? What you're up to these days. What you do for your day job.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Um, so currently I am Director of Customer Service for an airline. And as I was mentioning to you, Mark, and I'm sure people can imagine, it's been a heck of a couple of years to be in the airline business. I've been in healthcare for about a dozen years before that. But in my role at the airline, I've got the contact center, of course, really focused on reservations, helping people make bookings, change bookings, that sort of thing. My team also handles the formal and regulated complaints. So if somebody is dissatisfied with something, the DOT regulates us on how we respond to those, the timelines, making sure that we kind of meet certain requirements that they have for us. We also have a team that works on more real-time operational issues. So if you're going to miss a connection, for example, because of a delay that we have, I've got a team of people that's monitoring that and trying to figure out how to kind of fix that problem for you, things of that nature. We do a lot of passenger communication stuff, so emails that go out, or maybe kind of what we call advisories on our website. Hey, you need to know about something going on in the Dominican, or whatever the case may be. And then, of course, all the normal stuff, workforce management training, et cetera, et cetera. In addition to my day job, I also serve as the president of the Midwest Contact Center Association, or MWCCA, based here out of Minneapolis. We also have a sister site in Chicago that's launched in recent years. And so if I'm not doing my day job work, spending some time trying to help the local contact center community here in the greater Minneapolis area.
Excellent. We are definitely going to dive into that during our conversation because, being involved with local associations or regional associations is something that's near and dear to both of us, I know.
Yeah.
One of the things that you just talked about that really resonated with me was the idea of proactive customer service. Your team has the insight, and they're actually using the insight to create a better experience for your travelers. How does that go over typically with the folks that you proactively outreach to, or are they already amped?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like many businesses. There's so many different things that we might need to communicate to different people, right? And we often actually don't even know what you as an individual may need or want. So it's always trying to figure that out, right? How do we provide the right amount of information at the right time? But one of the things that we did through specifically the pandemic era, when people were traveling, especially internationally, but domestically as well, there was all sorts of different rules that you might need to know. So at one point, if you were traveling to LA, you needed to understand the local ordinances. If you were going to go to Mexico, or you were going to go to St. Thomas, or you were going to go to any of the, everywhere, everyone is coming up with their own rules, trying to figure out how to deal with the pandemic, right? It was difficult for us to keep track of. We could only imagine for our customers what that was like. And so one of the things that we did is, I mentioned these advisories. So we built out the advisories on our website, but that assumes you're going to our website looking for that information. So then the next thing that we did is we built out an email that would be sent out to people 72 hours before their departure, and it would let them know about what are our rules. Do you have to wear a mask or not? That sort of thing. But then it would also say, hey, by the way, you're going to Mexico or St. Thomas or LA. Here's some local stuff that you should probably be aware of, and bring them out to our website where all of the details are located so they could go and figure out what it was that they needed to do. So like if they needed to take a test before returning to the US, they need to be aware of that. And to the extent possible, we would try and provide some local, hey, here's some labs where you can go and get that done, that sort of thing. And so yeah, it was a lot of work, but it was something that we felt like we needed to try and do for people. And I think as we come out of the pandemic, the frequency and the level, the scope will change. It should come down, obviously, from what it had been. But I think that idea is something, that concept is something that we really want to be able to keep around, because there are things, what if there's traffic happening at the airport where you're flying into, and that's going to impact when somebody's going to be able to arrive to pick you up, or whatever the case may be. So trying to help provide those sorts of things, but having that underlying infrastructure already built is really, really useful. And so we have it built out in a way where we don't have to do anywhere near as much work as we had to do up front. So now it's like, all right, update the website, do one thing in this database, and then we're good to go.
That is awesome. And I love seeing those that are really on the front lines with consumers at their most neediest time. They're traveling, they're trying to get home, they're trying to get to someplace. And I mean, really looking at it through the lens of the customer, as opposed to what your organization feels that people need. And I love that concept. Let's kind of dovetail into like leadership and challenges that you might be facing. As a contact center leader, what are the toughest challenges that you're experiencing today, and how are these different today versus what the challenges were pre-pandemic?
Yeah. A few of the common kind of pandemic era and endemic, or wherever we are now anyways, challenges.
Somedemic.
Yeah, exactly. For like many out there, for us especially, extreme volatility and volume, right? Now, contact centers, we're used to it, like, oh, somebody sent a mailing and they didn't tell us, and like we're going to get flooded, but not like this. I had never seen the up and down with such extremes like we did through the pandemic era. Now it's leveled out a bit, but I think it kind of teaches you some lessons about preparation, right? In March of 2020, at a point where in normal circumstances, we would be getting about 2,000 calls a day, not a lot. There was a day that we got 60,000 phone calls. What do you do?
Wow.
Everybody's trying, everybody's panicking. They're all trying to figure it out. And as much as we want to be able to help every single one of them, how do you scale up that way? You don't. I mean, you just can't, right? So extreme volatility in volumes, which again, I think it teaches you some lessons and makes you think about how you prepare for the future. Extreme volatility in customers. Again, I think a lot of people out there have faced this, especially frontline folks at grocery stores and coffee shops, flight attendants, contact center agents. I've never seen anything like it. Things have been tense, and just the level of volatility and anger from customers has been extreme in a way that I've never seen. People have found my personal cell phone number. They've shown up at the office looking for me, messaged me on social medias. It's those sorts of boundaries that had been there previously suddenly were gone. And, frankly, like, while that makes me uncomfortable, my agents were dealing with it in a much different way than I was, right? It was day in and day out, they were dealing with the volatility. Luckily, they were, not probably as visible to the public, where somebody might show up at the office asking for them by name, but still, just the volatility from customers has been extremely extreme. And then I'd say, like, at this point now, really that tough job market that everybody's been dealing with, high attrition, we haven't struggled to find people to hire. We've struggled to like get them to actually show up day one and then stay more than a couple weeks at a time, that sort of thing. So we've actually been onboarding people at a really healthy rate, but every single class is falling short of where we aim to be. And within a month or so, we've lost more people than what we had expected. And so again, like, it's all the things I think probably that anybody that would be out there watching and listening is probably experiencing some very similar things.
Yeah. The definitely the falling short of staff needed, being at less than capacity, is a common problem. And it doesn't matter if you're fully remote, hybrid, in the office. It's a problem that I'm sure we're both hearing. I know I'm hearing it out in the Austin market, and I'm sure you're hearing it in the in the Minneapolis and Chicago markets as well.
Yeah, earlier this summer, there was a report that came out that, now I forget if it was Minnesota at large or the Minneapolis area, but at any rate, the unemployment rate was the lowest that had ever been recorded anywhere in history of recording unemployment rates. So like, if you're looking to
Awesome.
hire people, Minnesota is
Yeah.
not a great place right now. I mean, there's more jobs than there are people, So I do
Yes.
think that like when leaders are thinking about hiring and attrition and whatnot, if they're concentrated in regional areas, they might need to step back and understand the hiring market there regionally to them compared to other parts of the US and even beyond, perhaps.
And that's where I think the value of the value demonstrated during the pandemic. Let me just get your thoughts on this. Where it's okay to be remote, and you can still perform your job, very well, not having to sit in the office. And it creates, almost like hub and spoke type of operational centers. If a company wants people to come in the office, great, but if the market in the hiring market isn't conducive to filling your seats up, you got to look out into other parts of your state or other parts of your region that you're willing to bring on high quality talent from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. So what are you seeing as some of the leadership lessons that are coming out of the pandemic? Before we had everybody in-house, and now folks are remote, they're spread, they're hybrid, they're in some days, out some days. From your perspective, what are some of the leadership lessons that you're seeing coming out of the pandemic?
So one of the things I had talked about was that extreme volatility and volume, right? And
Mhm.
then add the staffing challenges
Yeah.
on top of it. And so
Mhm.
I think one of the things that is going to stick with me forever now, and I think probably most need to be thinking this way too, is just the way that we leverage technology, the way that we leverage communication, automation,
Mhm.
self-service, really being set up in a way that in order for a customer to be taken care of, doesn't always require a one-to-one relationship with an agent
Yeah.
in a contact center. Because as soon as things go bad, we're
Mhm.
just, again, you can't double, triple, quadruple your staffing overnight. And so
Yeah.
if something hits the wrong way and you don't have a way for the customers to handle that themselves or to get
Mhm.
information in an efficient way, you're in trouble. And so I think, a lot of contact centers is just like we've kind of been doing it the same way forever, even though the technology is here and you hear all of the
Mhm.
stories about, people leveraging technology and the best practices and this and that. The reality is most contact centers are not doing all of those things that we read about all the time on LinkedIn and in the news. They're just not, right? But so
Exactly.
that's where we have to be thinking. And as part of that, I think a lot of contact center people also are not technology experts. And so it's
Mhm.
like, what do we need within our leadership team, within the contact center, within the organization to support
Yeah.
us and understand what are the tools? How do you leverage them? How can you automate all of these manual tasks that are not super
Mhm.
high valuable tasks, but they still need to get done? Get those out of people's hands and have the
Mhm.
machines do it for you. So then you are positioned to really help your customers. You can give the same level of service, maybe better with less people or the same amount of people as you're scaling and growing or as your volume is doing this.
Oh, I love that. Um, you know, the the rise of technology over the last couple of years. Um, everybody had to go to the cloud, from a contact center perspective. But I have this philosophy that you don't give the keys to a Lamborghini to a toddler,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a one size fits all, relationship. What may be a benefit for your organization is not necessarily going to be the right fit for your organization.
Yeah.
Um, even though it sounds great,
Yep.
um, implementations, we've both seen this. You try and bring in, new technology, and all of a sudden it blows up and it creates a bigger problem for you. And that's why, working within your network, to bring in the right technology at the right time, and the right pace of change is so important.
Well, and there's so much noise out there today. You know,
Yeah,
20, 30 years ago, there was only so many different tools and technologies to consider. And now we're
yeah,
just flooded. Hey, you can
mhm,
do voice AI, you can do chatbot, you can do this, you can do that. And it's like, so I think we've become overwhelmed with all of
yeah,
the things, all of the toys. I think sometimes
mhm,
we have to ask ourselves, like, is it a solution in search of a problem? Or did we go the right way and we took a problem and identified a solution? You know, get really clear on
yes,
what do we need to solve, why, how. And then I think too, also being realistic about like what is the organization's underlying infrastructure? Like what can you support? There's all sorts of
mhm,
really cool things that I couldn't
yeah,
possibly plug in right now because I don't
mhm,
have what it needs to be built on top of. And so understanding those
yes,
things. And then lastly, I think is like understanding how to pull that stuff through the organization and make a compelling case. And I think that's where
mhm,
sometimes too we struggle because we haven't been taught. Is like, is there ROI in this? Yes or no?
mhm,
Just because it's
yeah,
cool and like it would
yeah,
be helpful doesn't mean that it has ROI. We were looking at something just the other day and we're like, oh, that would be super great. And then it's like, but when I look at the monthly cost of that, am I getting that much value back? And can I show that? No.
mhm,
So if the answer is no, I'm not bringing that forward, right? Like you don't bring things forward when you're not sure that you truly can justify it.
exactly. And I mean, all that boils down to the first question when you have a challenge or a problem and you're looking for a solution for it is why.
Mhm.
You know, if you're not asking the why question before you start diving into the what and the how and the when and the where and all the other W questions, um, you know, you cannot answer that ROI question in my opinion. You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
um, so next question is, yeah, as we're kind of talking through this, you talked a little bit about customer experience, at the beginning, that proactive customer experience. But what are your thoughts about employee experience and customer experience being mutually exclusive of each other?
I I always love seeing people talk about this topic, and I think that I agree with some of the what's deemed common knowledge, but not all of it.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference between correlation and causation. And I
Hmm.
think to say that simply if your agents are happy that you're going to deliver a good experience to your customers is just not quite right. Now, you might be better
Yeah.
positioned to do it, but you
Yeah.
could give a really great agent experience and a really crummy customer experience, or vice versa. It's
Mhm.
not that one absolutely definitively leads to the other. But again, if you're giving a really crummy employee experience, then you're less likely to be giving a good experience. You know, it's going to be
Exactly.
more difficult. Your people are not going to be as happy. I definitely, for me, employee experience and customer experience in terms of like my goals and focus are kind of 1A and 1B. I actually probably slightly prioritize employee experience over customer
Mhm.
experience, understanding the fact that like I've got an entire team of people that their focus is our customer. And so
Yeah.
like while I do have to influence at a high level and I have to
Mhm.
represent us and represent the customer across the organization, it's not like I'm the only person thinking about our customer within my department, right? Everybody
Exactly.
is.
Yep.
But I do have to make sure that the standards for how we want to treat and lead our employees, like I have to own that 100%. Now, there are other leaders
Hmm.
within my organization thinking about that as well, but that is, I spend a lot of time every day and every week just thinking about that and looking at that. And so, again, when you think about like attrition, for example, like if people are unhappy and they're constantly leaving, that will influence the customer experience, no doubt, right? So
Yeah.
there's,
Yep.
again, in my opinion, it's correlation, not causation. I think that
Mhm.
we can be a little naive to say that like that they can't move independent of each other because I think that they can, but I think
Mhm.
ideally you have them working together towards your goals.
And you know the the intelligence that you can get from listening to customers and the intelligence that you can gain from listening to your employees who are listening to your customers.
Mhm.
I think, to your point, is it correlation or is it causation?
Mhm.
Tail wagging the dog, that type of thing. And I think it's I completely agree with you on how you kind of frame it, 1A, 1B.
Mhm.
Makes a lot of sense. Um, so for people that are looking to embark on their leadership journeys in a contact center, you and I have been doing this for a minute or two. We've got the T-shirt, and the bruises and all that other fun stuff. But what would be your top three recommendations for someone that says, you know what? I like working in the contact centers. I like working with people. I think I want to make this a career for myself. What would be your top three recommendations for them?
I think one would be being open to feedback, especially in the earlier part of your career, when you're still trying to kind of figure it out. I think when you start out, if you start out in a frontline role, what you're able to see from that position is pretty tunnel vision, right? You don't have a good view of the landscape. And sometimes we can make assumptions and we can make decisions about what we think is happening based on the view that we have, and we don't have the whole picture. And so I think really being open to feedback from your peers, from your leaders, from people that maybe have been doing it and maybe have a different perspective on things can be really is important, really, really imperative. Networking, I think Mark, for you and I both, I think we probably both would say that networking has been foundational to who we are, to our success, to the things that we've been able to do, our growth, our development. Um, I was lucky to have a leader that was sending me to MWCCA events and that sort of thing, and really was pushing me to not only network within my organization, but more importantly, maybe outside of my organization. Again, just
Mhm.
in terms of being able to learn and grow and develop, learn what other people are doing, solutions that they've already identified, and then being able to give back to those as well as you are building your own kind of expertise. Again, is just like foundational, I think, to who I am and where I am. And then lastly, I think so balance is a word I use a lot. Everything in life, everything in work, there has to be balance. And so I think one of the things that as you are kind of growing in your career, and especially within the contact center, the importance of balancing the needs of the business and the needs of the people, whether the people are the employees or the customers, it doesn't matter. Sometimes, again, we can get really tunnel visioned on one thing, and we can not provide appropriate attention and acknowledgement to one aspect of what it is that we're supposed to be doing. And so finding that balance in both, understanding that like delivering a good customer experience, for example, doesn't mean that we're going to bankrupt the company by giving a customer the world, right? And vice versa. Like it's not all about saving every penny for the company in spite of the customer, whatever the case may
Mhm.
be. So I think that balance is just really, really important to keep in mind and always be kind of checking ourselves on like, am I balanced right now? Am I skewing my perception or my focus too far one way or the other?
I love those. I love those. The next one, the one I want to dig into a little bit because I think that I love the way you phrase this, foundational. The value of networking, and definitely not a sales pitch for MWCCA or ACCA or any of the other great regional associations, that are out there. But I mean, creating that network, creating that ability for someone to see things outside of the lens of their four walls. Do you see that as the some of the larger value props for becoming involved with regional association?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's got to be at least 7 regional associations in the US,
Yeah.
roughly, right, that we're aware of. There's at least like
Hmm.
3 in Canada that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
And every single one of them, of the ones that we're talking about, these are nonprofit. They're run by people that are just giving their time back to the community. So,
Yeah.
I think that's important. Like, it's not a sales pitch because that's not what they're trying to do. I think, our associations, I think, are really similar in how we view all of this thing. And we know
Mhm.
that vendors and salespeople are super important and we want them to have a role in our association, but it should be
Yes.
like 90% practitioners and 10% of the people that have the best practices and can help kind of fund the organization, that sort of thing. But yeah, when you have a nonprofit of people that want to just give their time back to the community and bring the community together,
Mhm.
and help people grow and learn, not only what's the common wisdom, the best practices, the things that we've known for 40 years that are still true today as they were 40 years ago, and what's the emerging technology or what's the new thing that we're learning about,
Mhm.
the changes in concepts. And then yeah, just being able to pick up the phone or go on to a forum or something like that to say like, hey, I'm having this problem with workforce management, quality, leadership, trying to develop my leaders, customer experience, technology, whatever it is. When you've got this community of hundreds of people that are either jacks of all trade or specialize in certain areas, man, you can find answers so quickly, and just um, the rate at which you can develop yourself just grows exponentially.
And I think the other piece is, you know, you can find a mentor within these communities that can really help you see leadership and see your organization and other organizations and customers and employees through an entirely different lens. I talk a lot about lens,
Yeah.
um, and I think that I think it's important to recognize, for all of us, we're so into the day to day within our individual organizations that, being able to see what else is possible, it's very hard, if you're not willing to look beyond the four walls. So
Well, so I'll give you a really good example. Earlier this week, we had an MWCCA event, and I met a woman I hadn't met before. She was with an organization though that has been to events, and so I'm familiar with the organization. And so we got chatting, and she said, "Listen, I'm a pharmacist. I'm not a contact center person, but my
yeah.
organization needed a pharmacist to run the contact center. So now I'm running the contact center as of January. I've never done this before. I have a team of hundreds and I have no idea what I'm doing." And it was like, I
Yes.
am so glad that you are here right now. And but if you look at many of the contact centers, what happens? It's people that grow up within the organization that end up
Mhm.
leading it, right? Which is
Yeah.
amazing because they understand the industry and the organization. But that doesn't make them experts in contact centers. If all you
Correct.
know is how that organization has been doing it for the last 10, 20 years, then
Yeah.
that's what you know. And so that's where I think this sort of thing is like you're expanding your horizon to look through different lens to gain the experience and the insights from others.
Yeah, I love that story because, you know, because of the way the job market and attrition, retention, has played out over the last couple of years, there's a lot of people in our industry now that may have just been tapped on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you're really good at your job.
Yeah,
Guess what your new role is?"
yeah,
And and being able to network into groups like ours, and the other great ones that are out there. I think it's so valuable. It's so valuable.
mhm,
Well, Jeremy, thank you very much for your time. Now we've gotten to the end of this, just about, and we've come to the section of Coffee Talk with Brohawk, where I call it speed round. You ready for this?
Ooh, almost. Okay.
Yeah, take a drink. You're gonna need some coffee.
All right, here we go. I'm ready.
All right. So, what fact about Jeremy would people most be surprised to learn about you?
Um, Probably that as a young man, I was a skateboarder who listened to heavy metal and had like an eyebrow piercing and
That is amazing. I would not have didn't see that one coming.
yeah,
Oh man, we'll have to talk a little bit about that
yeah,
offline
yeah,
sometime.
yeah.
All right. So what now? This actually kind of scares me. This next question is, what is your ideal off the grid location then?
So we actually have kind of a nice little off the grid spot. So about 35 minutes from our house, we have an RV at a seasonal campsite on a lake. And so it's easy during the summer and the fall and the spring for us to jet up there. We're there like every weekend. I built a little stone fireplace at our spot. We've got a screen porch to get away from the mosquitoes here in Minnesota. And then we've got the lake. So that's been a really amazing spot. It's been such an amazing find, and having it so close to home, we can quickly get off grid. Our cell phones hardly work there. It's 30 minutes from our
There
house,
you go.
but it's so close to home too that it's just easy to pop back and forth.
Yeah, the mosquitoes up there, they are big.
Yeah,
It's like the state bird or something.
yeah, absolutely.
And so you and I have a lot of experiences in life, but I'm interested, what product jingle gets stuck in your head every time you hear
So I don't know if this one's local or not. It might be, but there's a Cars for Kids jingle locally. 1877 Cars for Kids, KARS Cars for Kids. Yeah, I don't know
it?
if you guys have
Yes.
that one, but yeah, that one gets stuck in my head every time I hear it.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Yeah, that one, I find myself, even after the commercial goes off, that I'm still singing it to myself.
Yeah.
It's such a happy jingle.
Yeah.
Um, so Jeremy, if someone wants to pick your brain about leadership, MWCCA or anything else that you've experienced, in the contact center industry over your career, how could they get in contact with you?
LinkedIn is a great way. Search up Jeremy Hyde on LinkedIn. You're going to find me. I'll be one of the top people that pops up. And yeah, reach out, drop me a personalized note, and always happy to connect with folks.
Fantastic. Jeremy, thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Great conversation. And I got to learn more about this whole skateboarding thing and eyebrow piercing
Yeah,
and yeah, we'll have to talk about that over some adult beverages sometime.
absolutely.
Well, thank you very much again. I appreciate it. And if you like this video, please go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel, where there's definitely more of this content, and hopefully I'll have some more conversations with Jeremy out there sometime in the future. Thank you very much and have a great day.